All right, everyone. So today, we've been talking about box model properties, including width and height and border, padding and margins, borders, and I want to talk about this kind of idea of resetting. Okay. So if you remember, when we talked about CSS, there is a default user agent, okay? And the user agent actually sets some default properties of your page if there is no CSS. So for instance, this is exercise 10. I'm just going to preview it into a browser. Okay, and this is what my page looks like kind of by default. This is a heading 1, a heading 2, heading 3, there's a couple paragraphs here, there's an unordered list, right? And if I right click and go to inspect, and I highlight this H1, over here under styles, it says user agent. Okay, so this is actually built into the browser, in this case Chrome. This is like the default. And you can actually see that it actually has some of the CSS properties that we've been talking about, like font size, there's margin and font weight and things like that. So it's actually pretty, it's defaultly adding that stuff in. Another thing to note though is if I highlight this H1, you can kind of see here, I can't move my mouse because it'll get rid of it, but like see that orange part on the top and the bottom of my H1? That's actually the built-in margin. So heading 1 has a built-in margin to it. That's what that orange thing is. And so, my H2 here, which is below my H1 in the code, it's not going to start until this is done, right? So the idea here is, well, what if I didn't want these so far apart from each other in terms vertically? What we could do is we could remove the default margin, okay? This process is known as zeroing out, because what we're going to do is we're going to literally set the padding and margin to 0. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go here, and in my H1, I'm just going to set the padding to 0, and I'm going to set the margin to 0. Okay. Now, by doing this, some browsers use margin, most do. Some use padding to separate stuff. That's why we're doing both. And we're setting basically margin and padding for at least the H1 to 0. So now that I've done that, if I go back, you can see it actually moved. And see how, like, now I'm not getting those little, that orange bit on the top and the bottom? Because I zeroed it out. I removed it. If I take this off temporarily, you can see it comes back, but this removes it. Okay. Now you notice there's still a space between this, and that's actually because the H2, like the H1, also has built-in margin on it. So, what I'm going to do is just come back here, and I could say H2, padding, 0, margin, 0. And so now my H1 and my H2 are literally right next to each other. Okay, so if you want, you can always, if you don't like the default spacing, you can always change it. So for instance, like maybe I want a little space between it, but just at the bottom. I don't want it at the top. So maybe I'll come back to the H1 and let's do a margin bottom. So it only applies to the bottom. And let's do like, I don't know, 10 pixels. All right, so it is putting some space, just not a lot. It's a little less than there was before, but there's a little bit. So once again, we can control this, okay? We can say exactly how much spacing we want. Another thing to note is, notice how that my content, my text, it kind of sits in a little bit from the page itself. And that's actually because the body, if I click on the body, there's actually some built-in margin on the body. If I click on it, you can see a little orange kind of frame around it. So if you wanted your text to be right up against the edge, well, same thing. Let's take our body, padding, margin. You can set it to 0 pixel, or just literally you can just type in 0. It does the same effect. And then there you go. So now it's a little bit closer. I'm going to go down here to this unordered list. So the green, the orange in this case is the margin. The green is the padding. So there's actually like a little bit of padding here. They call it a padding inline start, which means it applies just to the horizontal direction. So actually, I'm not going to change the margin, but I kind of want to bring this over so it doesn't indent, basically. So, well, let's zero it out. Let's go to the UL, and I'm going to apply padding left, and let's zero that out. So I'm zeroing out the padding on the left side, and then now it's pulling it to the left. I maybe don't want to do so much because now I'm actually losing my bullets, but so I might play around with that. Maybe like 15 might be good. There you go. So once again, we can control all of the spacing here. I can say how much space do I want between these items. So I can take each paragraph and figure out how much space. And if you want to remove or change it, just reset using margin top, margin bottom to reset. So I might take the same H3 here. Margin 0, padding 0. But then that's going to bring, what's going to happen here is that's going to, oops, did I save? Maybe I didn't save. Yeah, there we go. Let me save. There we go. That's going to bring these a little too close. So then, you know, I'm going to come here and I can apply a margin bottom of, I don't know, 8 pixels maybe. Okay. If you really want some, if you really want to reset everything and have total control over spacing, I put this link here. You don't have to do this, but this is this guy named this is called the Meyer Web Reset, and he created this in like 2007. So it's a little bit outdated, but it's still a pretty good idea. What it does is it takes all of your content and it basically brings it down to normal. So for instance, if I come into here and I paste this in, you can just literally copy and paste. All of my text gets reset. Okay. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, the idea is if you want total control, you don't want, and you know, this is basically what this is equivalent to removing the user agent. So it's like almost like the user agent didn't exist. And then if you want to start from scratch and not have any sort of built-in, you know, CSS, you know, then you can come in here and like figure out exactly the sizes you want and set it to exactly the way you want it. This is a bit extreme. Most people probably don't want to do this, but some people who want really good control over their design and they're afraid that different browsers might do things slightly differently, you may want to have this level of control. So I'm not gonna do everything, but so it's like I'm setting the default. You know what I mean? So yeah, try that out. That's exercise 10.